You want to go to that one?
If you do.
All right, here we go. Gohan in Texas, as soon as I push the button and all the magic. There we go. All right, Gohan, what do you want to talk about?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Just fine.
Good. I was going to talk about an argument I heard regarding abortion.
Okay.
Regarding specifically bodily autonomy.
Uh-huh.
Before I get into the argument, can I just understand where you guys are coming from? Do you both kind of deny that a human fetus is a person?
No, I don't. I don't know about
Yeah,
Christy.
I mean, it kind of depends on, quote, where you draw that line. What is personhood? How have we defined personhood? Like, we can get into that, but if we're going to talk about bodily autonomy, let's just talk about bodily autonomy, because as I think Jim's already alluding to, the question of personhood doesn't really matter here.
No, I don't need a fetus to be a person or not for the bodily autonomy argument to work. In fact, it works better if it works better with a fetus as a human being, I think. But other people are free to disagree, and we'll have beers over it sometime.
No, that's why I wanted to ask first, just so we can, at least for the sake of argument, doesn't mean you truly think a fetus is a person, but just for the sake of argument, we're assuming it's a person for this argument. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So it's a question I've heard a lot, but it's kind of saying that by banning abortion, we are giving more rights to fetus than any other human. So the question comes.
That's correct.
When is there a time where you can force somebody else to use their body for somebody else? When is slavery
appropriate? So the question you just asked me was, when is slavery appropriate?
Sorry?
You just asked me, the equivalent of what you just asked me is, when is slavery appropriate? That's the question you just asked me.
I'd appreciate if we could stick to the words. If you want to go to slavery, I'm okay with doing that. But
no, I'm saying if you do not have bodily autonomy, you are a slave.
Do you believe bodily autonomy is absolute?
To an extent, yes. There are, I mean, we can get into whether prisons are bodily autonomy violations or not and things like that. But for the most part, yes, bodily autonomy is pretty absolute because of the severity of losing your ability to control your own body.
So when those instances where it's not absolute arise, is that slavery to you?
It is a form of slavery, yes.
So you think it should be absolute. You just say right now it's not.
I'm saying that because we are limited beings, sometimes we have to choose the lesser of two evils.
And I mean, there are definitely circumstances where people are not able to manage their own care, where perhaps they're not able to consent to anything. And so their ability to take care of themselves, can we override that? I mean, that's very, very tricky. Like, I've worked in crisis mental health for a number of years, and it's very uncomfortable to look at the way our legal system deals with the autonomy of some of these folks. Again, it's difficult to know exactly where to draw some of the lines, but can we get to the crux of your argument?
Yeah, I just want to reply really quick, and then we can get to the crux of the argument. But according to Mr. Barrows, I think I said your name correctly, you're saying that when bodily autonomy is not followed, it's akin to slavery. There are some instances where you say bodily autonomy should not be held up. Are you saying that it's okay to have slavery in that instance, or do you want to change the phrase?
No, it's very, very. So there are times where you have to choose the lesser of two evils, but you should never ever lose fact of the fact that you are still choosing evil, even though it's the lesser of two evils. So in the case where somebody is unable to control their body and acts in a violent way, I am okay with saying to that person, we need to restrict your ability to hurt other people. Now, is that actually bodily autonomy? Is that other things we can argue that? Let's just leave it is bodily autonomy. In that particular case, we are choosing the lesser of two evils, where one person is uncontrollably hurting other people and then controlling that person to prevent that from happening. Is that still evil? Yes. Is that the lesser of the two evils? Yes. But we always have to remember, whenever we're choosing the lesser of two evils, we are still choosing evil. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess I'll get into the crux of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
I do have an instance where it would be, at least I believe, okay to prevent or take away somebody's bodily autonomy in order to help another human being.
No.
No, sorry, I'm saying I have this belief.
Okay, sure.
And you might as well after I go through this example. It's a common pro-life example called Cabin in the Woods. Pretty much it's a mom of an infant who goes into the woods, into a cabin. All of a sudden there's an avalanche. There's plenty of food for the mom to survive. Let's say for some reason, it doesn't matter what reason, she does not want to feed her infant, who can only eat off of breast milk at the moment. Should she be forced to use her body against her will to feed that other human? I would say yes.
No.
What do you say?
No, because you're forcing somebody to sacrifice themselves for somebody else, and I don't think that is a good thing to do.
You're using a person as a means to an end rather than an end unto themselves. And that's always going to be ethically problematic, if not just outright unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could acknowledge that you guys don't agree with that, but I do, then we could also acknowledge that I'm not fighting for rights for a fetus that I believe no other human has. I believe that infant has the same right as the fetus. So can we agree that I don't think that fetus has more rights than that infant based off bodily autonomy?
So there are so many, I mean, you're talking about so many different things. So for instance, with a fetus, one of the problems you have is before they're born is that this is going to cause permanent changes to a woman's body. 10%, or excuse me, that's the wrong statistic. A woman who's pregnant always risks her life as well as the infant's, right? So there are things that happen that are beyond just, say, feeding and life support. And reducing a woman to life support is problematic in itself. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if you want to get into like, yes, one might be a little bit more risky than the other. We have to talk about how high is that risk and at what point is it okay to kill another human or another person.
I don't get to make that decision for anybody else but me. Mm-hmm. I don't get to choose the risk level for anybody but me.
I think you do. I think if that human was a 5-year-old, you would choose a risk level that is appropriate in order. No. So you're saying that it's not up to you if somebody else chooses to kill a 5-year-old?
Oh, it's up to me to choose to interfere with that, right? And it's up to me to choose how much risk level I'm willing to take to do that, right? So if somebody has got a flamethrower and I got to get in between the flamethrower and the 5-year-old, I'm not required to do that. I may not be willing to risk that at that point for somebody else. So that is entirely up to me. Nobody has any right to tell somebody else to risk their lives.
I mean, go ahead.
You aren't made to save a life. You're just forced to not end a life. So it's kind of like in Batman. At the end, he's facing Ra's al Ghul and saying, "I'm not going to kill you. I'm just not going to save you."
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Like that woman should not be forced to feed the infant. Do I think it's the right thing to do? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can, feed somebody. But, if we carry that far enough, like, why are any of us having this conversation rather than volunteering at a food bank? Right? We can talk about how much you're able to give and what's the right amount for you to give and everything else. And I do think we have a moral responsibility to one another. But I don't think that we have an ethical right to come in and tell other people how much of their own bodies they are meant to contribute.
Can I respond to that really quick?
Hit me.
So I think that's a fair point. I think the difference between Ra's al Ghul and the infant in the cabin in the woods scenario is the infant is the child of the mother, still a child, still dependent on the mother.
Yep.
So if it was an orphan that she picked up along the way, her moral responsibility changes?
It's not her responsibility to take care of an orphan. It is her responsibility to take care of her child.
No, it is not her responsibility to necessarily do that if she doesn't want it. Because again,
We can't force that responsibility.
you're forcing someone else to do something again. And this is
Every parent has the responsibility to take care of their child.
No.
Until somebody else can do it.
No.
In this scenario, they're abandoned in the cabin in the woods. There's nobody else there.
And that's fine. And she can choose to do that or not. And there's no moral obligation for her to do that.
You can refuse to feed your child. That's your stance.
Yes, a person can refuse to feed their child. Yes, and there is nothing we can do to force it.
Yeah, well, we can. We can pass laws to make it forcible to feed and raise your kid.
No, we can take the kid away.
Yeah, we can take the kid away.
We take the kid away. We don't. I mean, trying to force a parent to feed. In order to, you can't force a parent to feed a child unless you're willing to put a cop in the house with the mother and the child. It's just not possible. But you can take the child away and give it to somebody who is willing to take care of the child.
If a child starves to death, then that's okay.
I didn't say that.
Nobody said anything is right or good.
Wow.
We don't want any dead kids, really. I mean, generally speaking, that's kind of the philosophy.
And do it again, and I'm just going to cut you off, all right? Don't put words in our mouth and don't say things we didn't say, or I will just simply drop you.
Maybe okay is not the right word, but is it morally permissible to let a child starve?
No, it's not morally permissible to force somebody else to feed that child. There's a difference.
So why is it okay to let that child starve in the cabin in the woods, but it's not okay to let a child starve out here?
Because it's not society allowing the child to starve. It's a mother choosing to do that, and then we can't force the choice. As a society, we can choose to pick up the slack.
We're allowing the mother to let the child starve,
yes,
correct?
In that case, yes, because there's no society to step in and help. There's nobody else around.
So, in one case, so if I can say your point fairly, if there's nobody else around, if it's up to the mom only, if she's the only one who can do it, it's okay to let the child starve. But if the child is not with the mom alone, not in like an abandoned woods scenario, then it's not okay because society can step in.
It really has to do, I think maybe we'll understand each other better if we're talking about like whose chair are you sitting in, right? Like I'm not going to advocate for that woman not feeding her child. It's wrong to let somebody starve if you have the ability to step in. I don't know that exact scenario. I don't know the situation. I don't know if it's even like practical or realistic or possible for her to step in. But if you have the opportunity to rescue a child from dying, I think you, quote, should do it. Do I think that society, the government, or anybody else has the right to say, no, you must use your body in this way? No. That anytime we're making that rule, we're getting into trouble. So yes, feed your babies, take care of one another, be kind to everybody as best you can, but that doesn't mean that we as a society can create an ethical maxim that forces anybody to do anything with their body.
Okay, so you're again, I'm going to try to phrase it fairly. You guys are against forcing the mom to prevent her kid from starving in the cabin in the woods, but every other scenario you are in favor of like forcing parents to feed their children.
No, we're not in favor of anybody forcing another human being to do anything they don't want to do, except when we're choosing the lesser of two evils.
Okay, so when is it okay to force a parent to feed their children? Never, or sometimes?
As long as if there's a society to pick up the slack, never. And if there's a society to pick up, and if there's a society to force a parent to do something they don't want to, there is a society who can pick up the slack on that.
Okay, so if there is not a society to do that, then it's okay to allow it.
I don't know that it's okay, but that's what's going to happen.
Sorry, not okay.
If there's no society, how are we allowing? I think we're starting to get a little bit off the rails, and that's okay because we've been pulling at this and tugging at all the different threads. It keeps coming back to you can't make other people do things with their body that they don't want to do. That's just how it works out.
Right.
I mean, I think clearly there is. I think parents have a duty to their children And until someone else can step in and take the role of parenting, they have to fulfill that duty. If society can do it, that's great. But if not, it's still their duty to.
And you're pro-slavery. You're pro making parents slaves to their kids.
I thought you said we weren't going to put words in each other's mouths, Mr. Barrows.
That's the effect of what you're doing, right? Because as soon as this is the crux of the problem. When you force somebody to use their body in a way they don't want to, you're forcing them to be a slave. There is no difference between those two situations. There's no difference between a society saying you must feed your kids and saying you must go harvest that cotton. No difference whatsoever.
Right. Or like you must put on clothes when in public. That's slavery as well. You must have your body clothed in public. Is that slavery?
Yeah, I would say that is a definite form of slavery, with forcing people to do that. I have no problem with people walking around nude if they want to. That's entirely a puritanical Christian problem.
I think that muddles down the word of slavery, and it's insult to everyone who was a slave when you say that is slavery.
That's very nice, but it doesn't change the fact that it is. As soon as because there's no difference between society telling a person they have to wear clothes and a society telling a person they have to go and harvest cotton. There's no difference.
I think there's a very big difference between those two.
That's nice, but what's the difference?
One is for the protection of others, specifically kids. The other is
how are kids harmed?
How is nudity dangerous?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if my 5-year-old sees a naked woman, and then he would start to ask questions, and then maybe he would start to try.
Oh, please don't ask questions! Oh my God, no, we can't ask questions. Oh wait, you're part of a religion that thinks that the first sin was eating the apple from the fruit of knowledge.
Wait, did you hear the last part of that?
No.
Where he had sex at age 10 because he saw a naked woman? Is that okay for you?
Is that how that happens, though, Gohan? I mean, you called in with a well thought out plan, and we wanted to talk about it. We talked about it. Now we are just so far away. The notion that your 5-year-old will have sex at 10 because he saw a naked lady just ignores everything we know about 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, about sex, about nudity, about the many, many, many cultures all around the world where nudity is commonplace. I mean, this is getting a little ridiculous. I appreciate your basic notion. You called in with a good, interesting question, and I feel like we answered it pretty adequately. And maybe if you want to play with that, sit with that a little bit and give us another try, yeah?
I think you guys did answer it fairly well. If I could just try to sum up the call, because we did get off track a little bit. I'm saying that a fetus and an infant have the same rights because I can force mom to breastfeed in a cabin in the woods. You guys are saying I can't do that, so therefore they don't have the same rights, and a fetus has more rights than the infant. Is that fairly
Yes, I mean, the mechanism of forcing a woman to breastfeed in the woods is kind of begging the question, what does any of it even really mean? I think we can more so boil it down to, is it okay to force somebody else to do something with their body? And we both say no.
Okay, so did I think I summarized it fairly well. I think you guys answered the question fairly well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for the call, y'all.
All right, thanks. Bye.